have understood how file organization looks like, or file arrangement, we can now move on to file and folder naming. How do we name our files and how do we name our folder? You see, the first thing we start with is the root folder. Note that you can name it anything. For example, I started with naming this project. It doesn't mean that I can't name it any other thing. You can name it, what do you call it? You can name it my project, my anything, or whatever you want to name it. So the naming should depend on what you want it to be. So for example, I can name this my project as I did here. Name it my project. But one thing to note is that when naming, you should not in any way use space. For example, you see here in my project, instead of saying my project with space here, I used underscore, or you can use dash as I did here. So use dash or underscore to annotate space while naming your code. So now that we have created our root folder, we will now move to creating the project folder. Let's say you are building a project for one firm like that, you want to call it landing page. So you just name the project landing page, but because what we are doing is a lesson, that's why I named my own lesson 1 HTML tags. That is the lesson and the topic. And you can see how I use dash to annotate where there is space, where there is supposed to be space. That's for naming your folder. So the same way we name our folder is the same way we name our file, but the difference is that in naming our file, there are two things to note. The file has two details. It has the extension and the name of the file and the file extension. File extension is how a browser, you can name this whatever you want to name it, but when a browser wants to load your website, the first thing the browser will look for is a file called index.html, which is this first one. So it is compulsory to name your main entry file index.html. So after that, you can now name it any other thing. Let's say you want to design contact page, so you can now name it contact us.html. You can name it, let's say you want to design about us page, you can name it about.html. You want to design a product page, you can name it product.html. But the entry point will always be the entry point must always be index.html. This is how it should work. Then this .html, as I said, is the file extension. This is how the browser will know that this file is HTML file. Then when you use .css, it will tell the browser to see this as a .css file. This is how the browser will now know that this particular file here is a CSS file. You see, .js is for JavaScript. This is how the browser will know that this is a JavaScript file. We are going to stop on HTML, CSS, and JS for this particular course. We won't be going further with any other file extension type. So what you name your style sheet, which is CSS, that is for styling, to making the site beautiful. That's why they call it style. So you can name it anything you want to name it. Let's say about.css. That is where you will now design and make up your about page so that it will be beautiful. This is how you name your file. Then after that, you can place another file inside your root. Let's say for lesson 2, I can now create lesson 2 and the topic, as you can see here. as you can see here, like that. Then I can now add index.html, css, the same way we did in lesson 1. So this is how to arrange, to name your folders and your files in a good way that it will be easier for you to find it anywhere and at any time. Now we are going to move into our coding base and create a folder practically in a way that everyone will see it and see how it actually works.